Hello and welcome to another episode of 177 Nations of Tasmania. So what associations come to mind when you hear Norway mentioned? Dark, foreboding, far away, Viking ships traversing dramatic fjords, or trolls in dark forests? But beyond these cliches, for some Norway may also be associated with world-leading health and education systems, and one of the highest qualities of life in the world. Who would leave such a place, you may ask? Well, Anette is one such a Norwegian. But funnily enough, she didn't, as some might be expecting, leave because of the cold. More about that later. The short answer is she met a Tasmanian man after studying at drama school in London. The long version? Well, I'll let Anette tell you about that herself.
Hello, I am Anette Victoria Baker, and we are sitting at the stage in King's Hall in Railton today. It's a small place. I wouldn't have found it if my husband wasn't born here.
What brought you to Tasmania?
I met a handsome Australian in London.
And what were the circumstances?
Well, that's a tiny bit of a funny story, actually. I had broken up a relationship, and Valentine's Day was coming up. And I got 3 messages on my phone, 3 sort of Valentine messages, all 2 different languages, all of them very badly spelled. And I thought, I need something new. So I, shortly after I moved house, and I moved into this shared house, and there was my future husband, little did I know. I went to London because I got into a drama school there, Rose Bruford. So I had finished drama school and I was acting and working. And my husband, my soon-to-be husband, he had finished the Australian Army, and he was just having fun traveling the world, and had sort of ended up in London. Needed a job, needed to get more money to travel. I think he was planning to travel to Mexico and to learn Spanish. 6 months later, he found himself in Norway learning Norwegian. So I just remember him being very quiet and sort of very calm. I can be a bit all over the place. Okay. And he was this calm centre that I was drawn to. We didn't go straight from London to Australia. We had a couple of years of fun working, living in London, and then I ended up pregnant suddenly. And then my husband, my then fiancé said, Norway or Australia, where do you want to go? We can't have it in London, because unless you're very rich, it's hard to have children in London. So then we ended up in Oslo.
And how many years were you in Oslo?
6 years. Eventually, my husband couldn't take the cold anymore. He was working outside in a big puffer suit, dealing with boats, and it got a bit rough. And I stayed in London for about 10, 11 years. Mm-hmm. London gets under your skin. I loved London. And then stupidly, I thought that Australia was going to be similar. But coming from Oslo to London, the big cities, the first nights here, listening to the animals kept me awake. There was this sheep, little, what do you call it, a baby sheep that was crying. Yeah, the lamb was crying for its mother. And I was breastfeeding at the time, and I was laying in bed leaking, going, feed that lamb, please. Because it was like, bah, bah.
And what took you to London in the first place?
That was drama school.
But why especially London? Was there any particular reason, or was that just the school you wanted to go to?
Well, it was the school I wanted to go to. It was also the only language I could speak. It's not like I could speak a bit of German, but not well enough to go to school at that level. I got lots of, went to auditions, was in different fringe plays in London. And then I had, crappy jobs, really, as a waitress, as a sales assistant in Harrods and Selfridges, makeup assistant. I even worked in the kitchen where I had to wake up very early in the morning because I was good for auditions and for rehearsals at night. where I chopped up vegetables and made salads, and yeah. I have lots of skills now.
That sounds like a typical, well, you're a cliche actor's life.
Yeah.
People joke about it.
Yeah, it is. I was working with a lot of other actors. Well, you have to pay your rent, and rent is a lot in London.
Yeah, absolutely. So how long were you in London with your husband before you moved to Norway?
About 2 years. And then I got pregnant, and then we decided very quickly that London was not the place to be. And yeah, we ended up in Norway. So I had my kids there, which I'm glad about in hindsight, because birthing, giving birth in Norway is free. I was shocked to hear how much my sister-in-law, she chose to have cesareans, and the prices she paid just to get her own room up in Brisbane was like shocking to me. I was like, oh, your own room? Of course you get your own room. What do you mean? I was used to the Norwegian model where I went in, I had a water birth, had the twins, had my own room, had number 4 in the water birth. It was the royal service all along. Even the royals go in and do that. Yeah. So I'm glad in hindsight that I did that. Yeah.
And how was it because did you say your husband, he doesn't speak Norwegian? Or
He does. Well, his second language is now actually Norwegian. I think he learned, but he went to a Norwegian course for 6 months, where he attempted to learn Norwegian, but it was at the same time that our twins were born. And for anyone who's ever had twins, that's like a big thing, and it takes a lot of time, and I was absolutely exhausted. And for him to be away one night, first for the language, and then another night, 2 nights a week, and then he had to spend time learning it, it just wasn't a good time. I needed him to feed the babies, So he ended up quitting after 6 months. So he can say basic things, and he understands what we're talking about. But he never quite got there. Like he couldn't. His work was from his boss was British, so he was bilingual Norwegian British. So he spoke English to him. So because he didn't have to learn the language for his work, he got spoiled a bit. And then family members, most people in Norway speak English, and then so they spoke English to him. But then after a certain time in social settings, people get sick of it. They go, "You've been here." You've been here 2 years now, you should know the language, and then they just stop speaking to you. Like, they speak to you in Norwegian, and you either get it or you don't. So he got a bit of that treatment, and felt it a bit when my brothers were saying, oh, he should have picked it up by now,
Yeah, I think that might...
Which is hard when you're not, like, I think I started speaking English when I was 10. I can still remember the very first lesson. My name is Anette. What is his name? His name is this. What is her name? Her name is this. And then in year 8, you go on to German or French. So everyone sort of knows the basic of 3 languages. And then when you come in, the second language that you've learned is not even, he can't use it. And I can see that it's happened with my children now. Like my oldest, he's supposed to speak a tiny bit of Japanese and a tiny bit of French. It's just laughable. He's had it for years. He can't even say, my name is, It's you're spoiled when you speak English. You don't have to learn other languages because people understand you. I think I just expected him to cope and settle. I probably could have done more. I think he didn't have that many friends. Looking back on it, there were some Australian people. I remember I tried to get him to play AFL or something. There was an Aussie AFL club, and he was like, I didn't even play that in Australia. Why would I start now, sort of thing? Yeah. And I was like, well, just to meet some Aussies. And he was like, well, I'm in another country. I don't want to meet Aussies. I want to meet these type of people. So we were a busy family, with 4 kids. I had friends. My friends became his friends, my brother, and yeah. And Norwegians work a lot, it's work and play. Sort of a bit serious. I've probably had more to adjust to coming here because I thought it was going to be, okay, I speak English, it's going to be fine. It's sort of a version of London, and it really wasn't. The first year I was oblivious and I thought this is going to be fine. And then I actually ended up a bit depressed. Not like clinically, but I was like, oh my God, when my husband and I had discussions, I would run out of the house screaming, I hate Australia, I hate Australians, this is a shit country. And then one time we had a ditch dug for our house and I actually fell down in the ditch because it was dark at night. And the ditch was outside our bedroom window and I cried a bit extra for my husband to get attention. And he said that he was lying in bed thinking, yeah, she can just lay there. Because I ran out to get comfort from my cat. We had a Maine Coon that we bought in London and brought to Norway and then brought to Australia. He only lasted 1 year here. But he was fantastic. He could even talk. Yeah, so I struggled then for a couple of years, and then I realized that I had to find my own kind of people. I couldn't just rely on my husband's friends and my in-laws and family. And I found actors here. Met some writers and some actors here, and then I found my own. Actors are actors everywhere. They're lovely people. So then I got happier and more settled and started becoming a part of the community sort of theatre.
And what prompted you to move from Norway to Tasmania?
It was mainly because we were trying to buy a house. Okay. We were trying to buy a house loan, and my husband was the one who had the proper job. I was working in the kindergarten. He was designing boats. He has a background from the military with mechanical engineering, so he was doing boat building. And we just couldn't get a loan. They wouldn't, no banks would accept us because he was foreign. So we eventually decided that, yeah. And the fact that his parents were getting a bit older and wanted to see the grandkids. His sister was aiming to move to Sydney. She's since ended up in Brisbane. Yeah, it was, and he had parents that were young enough to be capable grandparents. My father passed when I was 13, and my mother had an accident when I was 28. So when we were in Norway, she was brain damaged and in an institution, so she wasn't a help. She was sort of another person that I had to look after. So, yeah, we moved for family, really.
And what would you say was the most challenging thing for you, at least at the beginning?
I'm a very emotional person, and I'm used to it being okay to express that emotion. That was not okay. People looked at me as if I was crazy, I lost my mum in 2017, and I remember I started crying in the car once because there was a song coming on the radio, and my mother-in-law said, "Oh my God, pull yourself together. Perhaps you should go and, you're obviously depressed." And I thought, no, I'm not. I'm just mourning my mum. And I actually had to go to a French friend who lives here in Railton and knock on her door and say, I can't cry. Like, I have no friends that I can express how upset I am. And she was like, come in, cry. Come on, just cry. I guess that's a Scandinavian thing, that you can cry, you can scream a bit. Russians, yeah. I do feel that Australians, I don't know whether it's the British thing, because there's a little bit the same in the UK, that you sweep everything under the carpet and you just don't talk about things.
Yeah, quite a lot of people I've talked to have mentioned things like that, and the fact that there's a kind of superficialness to social relations. Like when
very
you say
superficial, and my new saying is, I can only talk about the weather for so long, and then I need to talk about something a bit more real or substantial, because otherwise it's just a waste of time for me.
Yeah,
it's totally.
That's exactly what the Finnish lady that I interviewed said. A really interesting thing, which I really connected with actually. That in Finland, it's small talk is almost impolite because you're wasting the person's time by not getting to the point.
Yeah, exactly. So I used to think that when people said, hi, how are you? that I actually cared and wanted to know how I was. And in London, it took me a few years when I was like, oh, I actually woke up with a bit of a migraine, but I'm feeling better now. And they would look at me strangely going, I'm all right, thanks, how are you? That's how you're supposed to answer, you know? And then came here and I realized it's a bit the same. Yeah. And I had to ask my mother-in-law, how do I ask people if I actually want to know how they are? And she said, then you say, are you okay? And I go, okay. So now I go, are you okay? But I have met people who, you know, when I go, and because I open up quite easily, you know, I'll open up and I'll tell them perhaps things that you wouldn't usually tell when you first meet people. And then after I've spoken for a bit, I go, okay, so what about you now? Let's get all the skeletons out of the closet. And some people talk and then you go, and then they get a bit like, oh, well, why, I can't believe I told you that, you know, don't really say this much. But it's nice, it's real and it's genuine, and you share, you know, this experience of living.
Yeah. So would that be, in that situation in Norway, would it be just normal to be able to talk about your real feelings and so on?
Yeah, it would. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And even how depressed you are and how you want to dig yourself a hole, and yeah, that's just normal saying. It doesn't mean that you actually are that depressed. Norwegians can be introverted too. You sort of keep to yourself. There's this funny thing on YouTube, I think, about this American who's dating this Swedish person, and they live in a block of flats, and she keeps looking out the door before she walks out the stairways to go downstairs. And he's like, why don't you say hi to your neighbors? And I recognize that. I lived in a block of flats, and I used to do that. You don't really want to talk to your neighbors if you don't have to. So you wait till they're downstairs and then you rush out. Perhaps because we're so genuine, you can't just say, hi, how are you? Yeah. You know, perhaps it's become practical to do that when you meet neighbors all the time, because you don't always have time for that deep conversation, so you'd rather not. Yeah. I grew up in Oslo. I'm born and bred in Oslo.
And what kind of neighbourhood or environment did you grow up in? What was it like?
It was a green, leafy suburb of Oslo. Oppegård. It's, just big houses, nice big gardens, 20 minutes outside Oslo. Both my parents worked in Oslo. My father was an entrepreneur. He built houses. Okay. He had a firm that he built houses and sold them. And my mother worked in publishing. I had a very normal, happy upbringing. Nowadays, a normal childhood, you would start childcare when the child is 1 year old. When I was little, it was more like when you were 5, 6, you go to childcare, you go to school, you have after-school activities, gymnastics, ballet for me, soccer or football, like we call it in Europe, for my brother. I had 2 working parents. At the time, that wasn't totally common. So a lot of people in my class would have stay-at-home moms. My mom was a career woman, so we had a live-in nanny that would pick us up and drop us at school and serve us dinner before my parents got dinner at night. And yeah, I have lovely memories of childhood, like long summer holidays and beautiful Christmases. My mom loved Christmas. She started Christmas early December and it went on to mid-January. It was, Christmas was big, beautiful birthday parties, lots of friends.
So what did Christmas entail for your family? What would you have done?
Lots of Christmas parties, lots of family Christmas parties, long, big tables with lots of homemade food. My mom grew up on a farm, so there was all these things that you make from a pig, I still celebrate on the 24th of Railton, and my mother-in-law, she has the 25th still. Okay. So we have 2 Christmases. Well, it just doesn't feel like Christmas for me. It feels like first day of Christmas, which is sort of a hangover day for me.
Yeah. I think there's quite a few families like that in Tasmania, where one has the European tradition and the other one.
Yeah, so we dress up a bit more.
Okay.
It's like Christmas Eve is a big day. Like that's where you put on your national costume and go to church, and you're in your nines. And then I came here and, put my children in a shirt and trousers and a dress, and everyone else is in a t-shirt and a shorts. And I'm like, got this a bit wrong. It's a bit hot.
You mentioned that people wear more, dress up and do all those things, but how does families celebrate Christmas in Norway?
Well, you have from December 1st, you would have a Christmas calendar. And you might have noticed on the Christmas calendar that you only have 24 windows, which is an ongoing discussion in our household, that Christmas is on the 24th, not on the 25th. Probably because they're made in Germany, but... and then you have on the 13th of December, you have Lucia, the Italian saint that... long story, but about light and darkness. And the girls dress up with light crowns and go in kindergarten. There's always one girl that gets chosen to be Lucia. I was the lucky one. I happen to have long blonde hair. So that's a nice memory to have had. And then little Christmas, we usually have like something we call Christmas porridge with a little almond you hide the white almond in the porridge, and the one that gets it, gets a marzipan pig. And then Christmas Eve starts early in the morning. Usually half of Norway will be watching Walt Disney on TV, and it builds up, waiting for presents and waiting for the food. And some families, even if they're not religious, you would usually go to church, and then the church bell rings Christmas in around 5 o'clock, and that's when you're allowed to eat. And then after the meal, then you open the presents. Yeah. And when you got older, you might not have gone to the early church service. You might have gone to midnight mass then.
It must be very different celebrating Christmas here.
Yeah, I've gotten a bit used to it now. I close the doors and the windows and just have Christmas inside. And then after the presents, I realize, okay, we made it more of a lunch than a dinner now, because the kids can't wait that long, and they're used to opening as soon as they wake up the next day. And yeah, it's just hot. And yeah, so we do it usually a bit earlier, and then it's playtime after. And instead of building a snowman, you build a sandman, I guess, on the beach.
But do you keep up any of the traditions in Norway here?
I do. Yeah, I dress up my kids a lot more than I realized that Nan and Pop and my sister-in-law does, So 24th, we're in the full party clothes, and 25th, we're a bit more relaxed.
And the kids go along with that?
Yeah, they love having 2 Christmases there. Yeah. They feel like they have a leg in each country, so...
It's an issue for a lot of migrant parents. Trying to keep their language up for the kids.
Yeah, my oldest was 6 when we came here, and then I have twins. They were only 2, and then my youngest was only 5 months. So the 3 youngest have struggled more, because as my English gets better, I switch more automatically. Like when my son speaks to me in Norwegian, I will answer back in Norwegian. If my husband then says something in English, I swap, and I don't even think about it. Even though I have an accent, it happens naturally. So when I speak Norwegian to my children and they answer back in English, I swap to English. And my oldest is like, "You are speaking English again, Mom." And I'm like, "Oh, God, this is so frustrating." But I had, when my oldest started school, I was thinking, this is a shame that he's not going to be able to spell and write in Norwegian. So I did some research, and the Norwegian government actually have an online schooling program for Norwegian kids abroad. So he goes to a school called Global School, where he has 1.5 hours per week, and he has to give in lessons and read. So he is totally bilingual, and the younger ones are learning in that school as well. They couldn't follow normal progression. My oldest is following normal progression. If he goes back now, he's in the year that he should have been. The others are in the beginning level, because they couldn't quite. They followed year 1 and 2, but then they sort of, it got a bit hard. They were reading long text, not quite understanding. almost everyone goes to a public school. Like the public schools are good and they're free and they're for everyone. Even the royals went to public schools until a certain level. And then the royals, when I grew up, like I'm the same age as Märtha Louise, so she ended up in Kristelig Gymnasium, which is like a private school in Oslo that caters from year 7 up till year 12. So then my mom got this fancy idea that I was going to go to this school. And luckily, I qualified as one of the good students in my area, so my government actually paid for me to go to that school since I showed interest and freed a place for someone else. So yeah, I did public until a certain level and then private. And looking back at it, it wasn't that different. Yeah. The public was just as good, perhaps a couple of unruly students.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, almost everyone goes to public school, and same with health system. And yeah, everything is free. Like your taxes are higher. Lots of Norwegian women work, everyone pays taxes, and then after that everything is free. You know, you need a hospital, you get that for free. You need a doctor, you pay a small fee. Dentist is free, except braces, which you pay a little fee for. Glasses are free, little fee. Yeah, health system and education, even at university level, is free for everyone. And that's a big, big difference here, because now that I have 4 children with my husband, we spend a lot of money on private health insurance. Like coming from Norway, I was like, oh my God, I need the best one, the one that covers everything, you know? So we pay a bit for that. We had our kids in private school for a bit. That has since changed. I realized I'm Lutheran Christian, brought up, and I realized, I thought Catholics were sort of the same, and I realized it wasn't really. I thought they were sort of cool about things, then I realized they had some strong ideas about certain things, so we ended up in the public system. I've called myself a closet Catholic my whole life, because my mum used to take us to Catholic church, because it's a bit more you know, the crosses are bigger, the smoke is more dramatic. Okay. It's more of a church experience, but yeah, we didn't go often to church. It was Easter and Christmas. But yeah, so health system and school and everything like that, public, you know, transport, roads. It's a country where everything works. Yeah. And that has... You know, I missed that. I missed that I could take a bus and a tram. And I didn't have a driver's license coming here. I'd lived in London for 10 years. You don't need a driver's license there either. Yeah. And I came here and I was like, oh my God, the bus is once an hour. I need a car. So I had to learn to drive on the left side of the road. Yeah. I had done a little bit of training and that was on the right side. So that was something I had to get used to. That was going to be my contribution to the environment, that I never learned to drive. That's a big difference, that we pay more tax back home, but then everything works. Yep. And having said that, part of the reason coming here, when everything works, when, you know, education works, like talking at Tasmania as a whole, I've realized that there's a lot of people here who struggle to read and write, whose education is not that far come. In Norway, it's a place where everyone, even the ones who struggle, get up to a certain level. Most people have masters and PhDs, and if you don't, you're sort of, you know, a bit of a loser. And the pressure of achieving has become so hard or so strong on people that kids now are actually starting to suffer mentally, because if you're not a success or a, you know, within your area, you're a failure, and that's sad. My husband came from far away. You take the globe and you look at Tasmania and you look at Norway, and it couldn't be further apart. But there was just, you know, I fell into the rabbit hole of watching Married at First Sight or something when I first came here. And my husband said, if I continue doing that, he needs to divorce me because this is so stupid. But, you know, watching that, it was like, oh, I'm from Melbourne and you're from Sydney. Oh, God, this can't work. And I was like, okay, you're clearly not that interested if you're not willing to move a few hours away, you know? Yeah. That's what I was thinking, going, you know, to the other side of the world. Yeah. Like, he's clearly not the one. Just yeah, because for us it wasn't like we were together, whether it was in London, Oslo, here, Sydney. Yeah.
I talked to the ladies from Finland and I talked to the lady from Greenland about children in winter, and this is just, it's almost encouraged to play outside.
All evening, from coming home from after school, you would have a snack, perhaps do your homework, or you would do your homework. We would do our homework later, but then you'd be out and you'd be sledding. You'd be with all the kids from the street, and you'd be up and down this hill. Did you pull your sled all the way up, sled down, all the way up, sled down, 100 times, and then you came in for hot chocolate and some buns, and then there was homework and bedtime. Yeah. And building snow huts and snowmen, and it really happens every day. Yeah, I miss that, and I miss that my kids don't get to have that, and that they can't ice skate, that they can't. I'll repeat that since we had a car. Yeah, I miss that they can't, skate, they can't ski. I need to get onto that. I'm planning to buy inland skates. As a teenager, I realized that I suffered from a little bit of winter depression. My mother bought me a lamp, a special daylight thing that I would sit with in the morning. And then when I started studying in London, I realized I didn't have the problem anymore. And I noticed spring coming earlier, and April was almost summer for me. And that was nice, and I don't need it here because of the light.
Yeah, well, that's one thing. Even though people complain about the winter in Tasmania, which I never do anymore.
But I don't. I love it. It's just right. It's like an autumn, which is my favourite season.
And it's light. It's usually quite clear and sunny.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in Northern Europe, it's dark and gloomy.
The summers in Tasmania are actually a bit on the hot side for me. All this sunscreening all the time, it gets to me. And I've started to wear a lot of flowy summer dresses because I just feel so hot all the time. And I remember I had a dream in the last heat wave. I woke up and I was rolling in my duna, and I had dreamt that I was rolling in snow, that I was back in Norway, and I'd missed snow so badly, and I remember thinking, oh God, snow, I missed you. And I was rolling naked in the snow, and I woke up so happy, realizing it's not actually something that I have actually done in real life. I've never rolled naked in the snow, but it's funny how the brain cooks things up. Yeah. And I thought, next time I'm home, I'm going to do that. You're talking about this concept, being a Scandinavian. I read in a magazine, and I still read magazines, don't have time anymore. But there was this concept about hygge, and they call it the Danish concept, Hygge. And I thought that's what I grew up with. That's part of life. That's every evening, after work, after dinner, after play and homework, the family gathers together, and you have hygge, which is the fireplace is on, lit candles, flowers on the table, some snacks, some nice hot chocolate or a cup of tea, and you just talk about everything or watch a film, and it's like, nice and comfortable and hyggelig. I have really struggled finding candles here. I can only find scented candles in glass, the long church candles that, I have so many candlesticks that I can't fill.
Any other challenges that you found in settling in Australia? Or anything that was maybe challenging to adapt, that you needed to adapt to?
I have no idea what the fashion is anymore. I used to be up to date, and that was something a family member said to me. She lived in London, and she used to come home and she used to say that everyone in Norway dresses the same. And me and my cousin didn't used to get it. Then I lived in London and came back to Norway, and yes, everyone dresses the same. You can tell what type of jacket is fashionable now, what type of boots, which trainer. You just need to have a look out on the street what the young girls are wearing, and you're up to date. No, I have no idea. And that's perhaps a good thing. I think that freedom to just be yourself and not follow fashion, that's actually a bit of a relief for me. That last year's winter jacket is still okay. Yeah. You can just wear whatever you want to wear and be yourself, however weird you are, or quirky, or whether you work or you don't work. Like, I've had a few years here where I didn't work with the kids, and that was frowned upon a little bit in Norway. I was home with the twins, and you get a sort of family payment because you're home with twins and not sending them to childcare. And I took advantage of that, but everyone's on me, like, when are you going to start work again? And whilst here, the kids are 7 years old and they're still not working. Yeah. That wouldn't fly back home. No. You would get a lot of raised eyebrows. And that's been a bit nice.
One thing that you mentioned, and that's really common for a lot of newcomers to Tasmania, is just that thing of finding your people. Yeah,
I come from an acting background, and I have written a bit. And I remember I was strolling my I call him the baby, he's nearly 7 now, but he was a baby then, strolling him around Devonport. My mother-in-law had dropped me there for a day, for an outing, when I didn't drive yet. And I came past this shop window, and there was a poster about the Devonport Rep, and that they were celebrating 75 years. And I thought, oh my God, there is theatre here. There is some sort of theatre. So I went to that, and I met Karen Beatty and Ross Hay, and a lot of beautiful people who do acting here in Tassie. And I auditioned for their next play and got a part and became part of their reading group. And, since then I've been in Ulverston Rep and in Dumore, where Douglas is fantastic and gave me the part of Girl last year. In A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing, which actually went on a tour down to Hobart and was a professional play. So I got paid and got put up in a nice hotel. So finding your own people, wherever you are in the world, is important, I think. I've been a lot happier since then.